Hello, and welcome to Now in Zen, the podcast about microtonal and Zen harmonic music, foreign and domestic, past, present, future, for tuning conscious souls from all walks of life, for all ages. My name is Jacob Barton. I want to thank Stephen for inviting me on as a new co-host. This is episode number 22. It's a special episode featuring lots of 22-tone music. I think we have about 19 composers featured. I'll be talking with Brendan Brynes, Thomas Sherrick, Stephen Weigel, and Stephen Weigel gets on the phone with Sevish. And then I also talk to Gareth Hearne. And we're tackling the big questions like, how do I tune? What's the 22th root of 2 all about? How do I avoid becoming bored? And how can we, TIBIA, as the title of this song says, take it back into action? From theory to practice and back again. This is Now in Zen. Show me your room.
My room? Sure. Well, I've been working on music today. Here's the quick tour. I have a lot of compressors. So I have a couple of overstayer compressors. But so like in the last couple of years, I've gotten really into analog gear, and I've still paying it off with a credit card. But I have a bunch of overstayer compressors. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a Brute 2. It's a optical compressor. It's kind of like a LA2A. I have an API 2500. There's a preamp up there, the Neve preamp. And then there's a patch bay. Here's like I don't know if that's in frame, but there's a Dave Smith Tetra synthesizer, which I've used a lot because it's actually really good for retuning. It's good for microtonal stuff. And then I have that HPi tuning box that, which I think everybody knows about that. It's a great box. Patch bay, interface, and then over here I have some EQs. This is like the EQ section. I have a Pultec pair, just the 500 series, a couple of Rupert Neve Designs EQs, an Elysia EQ, and then some Cush audio stuff. So the Clariphonic, and then two of the Electra EQs. So, and then just a MIDI controller and some monitors, and yeah. Compression can be like it. I don't know. I used to overuse it a lot, and I'm trying to get into the more subtle art of using compression. So it's tricky. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to become a better audio engineer, and it takes a long time. It's really hard. So just like anything, I guess. I'm kind of all about recording these days, and I've definitely done performances by myself on microtonal guitar. But a lot of the times it'll be something that I've rehearsed, like at Microtonal Adventures Festival. That was I just wrote that piece. I have done some jamming, but it's been in a more like free improv kind of situation where like any note is fine to play. So that's been kind of a different thing. My friend Alex Wand, he plays. He's actually in the Parch ensemble, and he plays a just intonation guitar as well. And we did a couple of concerts together, and a couple of them were what are called sleep concerts. So yeah, it's for people who are actually asleep or can be asleep. So there was this concert that we did in downtown LA where they basically just had it wasn't beds, but it was like all of this space for people to just like lie down and basically fall asleep, and the concert started at midnight or something.
Wow.
And went till 6 in the morning. And I think we played at probably like 4 or 5 in the morning, and we just had our microtonal guitars, and we played mostly just like JI intervals with EBOs. So it's this very like textural, smooth sounding thing, and we kind of just jammed it out, and that went okay. But it's so slow and methodical, like when things are moving at that pace, it's a little bit easier to improvise, I think, and just sort of have two notes, just sort of be those two notes in a space, and it's fine. And then everybody's asleep, so if you make a mistake, it's not a big deal. So.
I'm very interested in, I guess, circadian rhythm maintenance and disruption, and just I'm in a kind of, I don't know, I'm still on a quest for getting a more balanced, sleep, work, life kind of schedule. Things don't feel like they've settled in for a long time now. And I haven't tried anything like, musical intervention. It's so much fun. And then I think, well, the musician's not getting sleep.
Right.
The musician's up all night. And who's playing music for the musician? And then
yeah, the sleep thing is, a concert is one thing, but I've heard that, and I haven't really like looked into this, but I know that people sort of before it was common to have electricity in the house where you're just relying on sunlight, like people would sleep, and then they would wake up in the middle of the night and just be awake for 4 hours and, be in the dark, but, they wouldn't go out to like work or anything and then just go back to sleep. So, yeah. And that actually sounds, as far as like a sleep cycle, that actually sounds really nice. Because I'm a night owl myself, and I love being awake at night, so that would be really appealing. But yeah, when you're trying to hold down a job or just participate in society, it's it's a little trickier.
And so you have a 22-tone electric?
Yeah, I actually have two, because when so I had that band 11s, which was all in 22 equal temperament, and at the time I was sort of taking it very seriously, and I was like, okay, well, I need a backup guitar, like in case, you know.
Gotcha. What years was that?
It's we're actually talking about doing some recordings, but our live performance thing is like that's not happening anymore. Two of the members.
Gotcha.
Well, actually, one of the keyboard player, Lauren Davis, is about to move out of LA, and then the drummer moved out of LA a year or two ago. So we only had, I don't know, probably 6 to 8 months of actually like gigging. There was a year or two of sort of prep and writing before that, but yeah, I have, it's actually right here. I have this, it's a Dan Electro. I really like the sound of Dan Electros, and they're also really
beautiful,
fairly inexpensive, so it's great for microtonal conversion. So I just sent this to Ron Sword, and he did the 22 conversion. Yeah.
Ron Sword guitars, metal total guitars.
Yeah. And then I have a microtonal bass, which I got like for the bass player. It's tucked away in a corner right now, but.
Wait, so you have two guitars and a bass?
Yeah.
In 22. Yeah, that's all you need. And then, well, and then if Steven were in your band, then he would have his like 22 rekeyed.
Yeah, the
rekeyed keyboard. Like some people like that. Yeah, changing the pattern of the Halberstadt to other keys. Other people, like I do, find just navigating the Halberstadt and counting the semitones and just.
That's how I do it too. Yeah, I've sort of grown comfortable with that, but I could totally understand if that were your main instrument, you would want to have something that's a little bit more repeatable. But do you work in 22 a lot? I mean, I've heard a lot of your more just intonation stuff, but
I want to share with you the main thing that I did that I don't know. It's the sort of the seed of what I'm working on in 22. It's called Follow the Leader, number 1. Maybe I don't know.
That's really cool. Well, so so you programmed it was a kind of a guitar sound. It was kind of hard to hear exactly what was there, but
Yeah, it's part of piano tech, one of the electric pianos. I want to say like the Rhodes imitation.
oh, okay, cool. And then so was that saxophone?
The clarinet, Gareth Hearne on
Clarinet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I guess clarinet's easier to retune on the fly.
He's just kind of lipping it in the upper register, and there's definitely lots of fingerings. Although I don't know any works that that are they're strictly in 22 equal.
In 22, yeah, for clarinet, I don't know.
So what was your way into 22 equal? How did you settle on that?
It was actually so I could do 11s, the band.
Mm-hmm.
I just sort of knew that I had to pick a tuning, and 22 sort of made the most sense. I was on the fence between a couple of tunings, like I almost picked 27 actually, but 22 27 is really cool as well. And actually hadn't used 22 very much, but it just seemed like I think this has been said before in a lot of different ways, but it really has a nice balance of consonant resources, but then you can get really microtonal and weird and get into kind of newer harmonic and melodic territory pretty easily. So
yeah, I mean, it's got that solid fifth of so there's a sense. I don't know how many, but I mean, when I came on this scene in it's like it's outside of the range that a lot of people consider musically useful. They say, oh, that fifth is too sharp. But when I have played with it recently, it hasn't struck me that way at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's
actually almost enough to make me doubt that my ears are changing in a major way just from so much exposure to microtonal music that I really have no idea how this music sounds to other people. Not that I ever did, but
right.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It is. I would give anything to go back and listen to what I've created now, with fresh ears. It might just sound totally awful and out of tune, which I imagine it sounds to some people,
or mind blowing.
Or mind-blowing, hopefully. I mean, I remember when I was first experimenting with JI tunings, when I was sort of learning about this stuff, I was definitely uncomfortable. It sort of felt like my brain was getting rewired to hear music a little bit differently, and I don't know, it was just very trippy. So I think 22 Ito definitely falls in that range where it is outside of the norm enough that it could either be mind-blowing or sound awful.
And do you find yourself listening to a lot of your music or reflecting on it, or do you just or is it more about the creation process?
Yeah, I'm more interested in the creation process. I mean, I do listen to my music, but usually if I have a project or an album or a song that's finished, I'll have listened to it and thought about it and spent so much time with it that I really can't listen to it for a year or two. I usually just kind of not listen for a long time, and then it's always fun to come back. I don't know, once or twice a year I'll I'll just sort of get in the phase where I'm just I'm gonna listen to some of my older music, and then it's always fun, and it's I don't have any desire to go back and change things, or I can just sort of accept it for what it is and move on. So I guess if I listened to something right after I, was quote unquote finished, then I would probably go in and change something. So I usually try to put things to rest and then let them be for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I always actually have to force myself to, not force myself, but I'm much more inclined to listen to podcasts or talk radio these days. And I try to listen to more music. Just listen to stuff that I've never heard before and just try new stuff out, new artists out and things like that.
Yeah, because there's just so much.
Yeah, there is, and it's. Do you have
favorite podcasts that you'd recommend to our listeners? Not necessarily related to Zen at all.
Not related to Zen. Well, actually, I mean,
Or not,
this is like seems like a plug, but it's really not. I actually really think it's a great podcast and it has nothing to do with me. But LeVar Burton Reads is really amazing. He basically picks a short story every week and he reads it, and then there's music and sound design around his storytelling. And he's an actor, so he gets into character for all the voices, and it's just, I don't know, I think it's really compelling. A lot of it's just he picks great writers, and his voice and delivery and his embodiment of the story is really, really fun to listen to.
cool.
So that's a good one. And I really like Hidden Brain. I listen to a lot of like nerdy audio engineering podcasts, like the Tape Op podcast is kind of fun.
Sean Sevish, the man himself. Sean but not heard. Let's talk about Gleam. Because you posted this excellent video today that I just attempted to watch, but I couldn't make it the whole way because I was a bit nauseated. Gleam and 12 EDO.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I've always wanted to be on this show. And I did this video last night randomly. Someone had asked me for the MIDI files for Gleam so they could do some kind of analysis on it. So I went and I did that, and then I thought, well, now that I'm here, I might as well replace all of these 22 EDO tunings with the nearest neighbour in 12 EDO, and then see what that sounds like. And what came out was just this abomination that I've put on YouTube today.
Yeah, because like the beginning almost sounded normal because it's basically just a semitone from 22, but then you have this middle part where there's like microtonal voice leading that's very obvious in the song, and then when it's in 12 EDO, you have these parts where it's just the same note like in the middle voices, and it's just not like, it makes it sound really like poorly like done, that kind of thing, you know, like more MIDI, you know?
Yeah. I think all this is the perfect demonstration of how microtonal music can work, but rather than showing people, oh hey, here's this microtonal song, doesn't that sound different? You get them used to a song like Gleam that a few people have heard before, and then when they then hear that in 12 EDO after being used to the original microtonal, it's then totally obvious that it sounds really different. So
yeah.
It's pretty fun making these videos.
Just the idea, I think, of rendering songs and other tunings is a really, really great educational device. And perhaps with Gleam, the microtonality almost makes the MIDI come more alive.
Yeah.
I think maybe people usually think of that backwards. Depends on if microtonal voice leading can like sort of like breathe some life into your sounds and stuff like that. Is that something you ever think about when you're writing?
No, not really, actually. No. And I'm not really thinking a lot when I'm writing, more the overall impression that I'm getting and what kind of experience I kind of try and model another listener and what kind of experience they would have when they listen to it on a kind of moment by moment basis. That's the stuff I'm kind of thinking of when I'm composing.
Yeah, so you're like trying to put yourself in the listener's shoes, basically.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. How do you kind of clear your head and get into that state where you can pretend like you're hearing it for the first time? Or can you?
You don't choose to do it. For me, it's more like there's this like I will be suddenly driven by an idea that will burn at me, that just comes out of nowhere and that just burns in my head. And then I'm like, I'll probably be at work and like struggling to focus because I've just had this idea. And then as soon as I can, just doing that and trying to get it all out as quickly as I can, getting it onto the screen and out of my mind, you know. So it's kind of like that. But there are times that I sit down and with no idea at all, and stuff, you know, most of the time stuff comes out anyway.
So what kind of chords are you using in Harmony Hacker? Because I hear, well, in Gleam and is So Thankful on Harmony Hacker too? Yeah, Gleam and like So Thankful and We Can't Be Blamed. And I think a lot of the tracks in particular, you have things that are very like, kind of like jazz chords maybe?
Yeah.
Although they really are just kind of like extended chords, like major sevenths. Right. Are you thinking about those songs being in particular modes, or are you just kind of using your ear? Like, I don't know, what kinds of chords would you say you're working with in those songs? Because they have a really distinctive sound.
Yeah, I am using my ear mostly, and yeah, there's a lot of major sevenths, minor sevenths, occasionally ninths and things like that. I like those because they're familiar, but they're still nice and colourful. There was one song on that album, Orbital, which is in the Bowl and Pierce tuning, which is based all on major seventh chords.
Wait, that one's in Bowl and Pierce?
Yeah.
Oh my god, how did I not know that?
Because it doesn't have that familiar Bowl and Pierce kind of 3-5-7 and was it 5-7-9 chords? I haven't gone for that at all.
Yeah.
Because you can do things like major and minor chords in Bowl and Pierce with certain voicings. You know, for example, you can't Bolan Pierce doesn't have a major third that you would need for a major seventh chord, but it does have a major 10th. So you can use that and the perfect 12th to build up a major triad. And then if you go even higher up, you can get the 7th, but it will be like a couple of octaves higher than it needs to be. So you end up with these wide open voicings, and that's what you hear on that track Orbital. But I'm just planing there. I'm breaking up that major 7th across different instruments, and then I'm just playing that at different positions on Bolan Pierce.
You can definitely do that with Bolan Pierce a lot, and when you are working with voicings in a Bolan Pierce chord, you have to like sort of radically change your thought process almost.
Yeah, that's true. But it's only I think the planing, I went a bit crazy with that on Orbital, that I think the other tracks that you mentioned, We Can't Be Blamed, Gleam, those ones are more, there's more kind of going on there. And like you said, it's kind of jazzy sounding harmony, but I'm really not a theory dude who could analyze that from a jazz harmony perspective. But yeah, it's got a bunch of like 2-5-1 little progressions in there, and that's how a lot of that's used occasionally to build that thing. It sounds great in 22 because that kind of progression does end up with these tiny little quarter tone steps.
Yeah, since it's not a mean tone progression, does that mean that if you're thinking about 2-5-1, you're starting the progression, you're maybe going somewhere you like, and then you start 2-5-1 at such a place that it's a syntonic comma higher when you start it, so that it leads back to the right chord. So you wouldn't really be calling it mean tone temperament, I guess, but is that kind of what you're going for there? Because I think I hear 2-5-1, no, like 2-5 at the end of the phrase in Gleam or something.
Yeah, well, Gleam was more. It wasn't really made from the idea of where it would end up in a theory way, but I was trying to recreate the kind of thing that I would hear in like R&B progressions, because I listen to a lot of different music, but you know, some of those classic like I'm talking about like 80s and 90s, like slow jam R&B kind of nice, really warm sounding stuff. Yeah, so I was trying to do something like that, and but just filling in some of the gaps in between the notes. Filling in the extra chords in between those chords, and that's where you get that descending progression. I've got one more thing that you can add on just about Gleam, because a minute ago we were talking about the 2-5-1, and the way I'm using that is I'm moving the root, like the bass line, 2-5-1, but then I'm putting a major or minor chord on top of that. That's where you get the little quarter tones coming in, because when you try and do that kind of progression, you can't make it work in 22.
Also, the 2 chord you're starting on actually is the one that isn't related by fifth to the 5. It's a 22 Edo semitone lower.
The root notes are related by fifths. So all the root notes are related by fifths, but then the thirds of those chords are not what you would get. They're not super Pythagorean. So I'm using the nicer sounding one.
Okay.
So that's where those little quarter tones slip in. Yeah, I just move the notes around on the piano roll, and I know how many steps gets me a perfect fifth. So I know, hey, I can move from this chord to the next chord maybe by a fifth, and then I just move. I'm just counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get everything in the right place.
Yeah,
that's how it works in my head. But then obviously communicating that to others is where it gets tricky.
Yeah, it can get difficult when you don't have the language to describe that, but I guess 22 is special in that people do kind of have a language to describe it, and the logic almost works pretty well compared to what we already know. It's kind of like 15 in that way, where like you've still got major and minor chords, you can still spell triads sort of comfortably and talk about scales that would make sense, but it's totally not 12 at all.
Yeah, it's really not.
towards the sky eloquently. The spirit bird flows over the valley. Watch us over the land, protects the people. You will see her roam freely, and she will guide you to the water. She's a great bird. She came down from the world above, and she is free.
Hello.
Gareth. All right. It's late here.
It's it's not too late, is it?
We got a 15-hour time difference.
Dude. What is it like? Yeah. Guessing.
Like
Too well to calculate it.
2:40. Yeah, I'm going to bed
Okay.
pretty soon. I am a night owl these days. Could you introduce your piece, Trio in Superpyth Temperament, for Irish whistle, cello, and piano?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. I'll tell a whole story.
Thanks.
Yeah, so the inspiration from that piece, which originally was just a duet for 49, Irish whistle and Superpyth, was when I built the Irish whistle in Superpyth, and I was playing around with it, thought of the melody, and then I had my Axis 49 set up. So let's make a little duet for the Irish whistle. And I think when I went to yes, I don't know how many practices on my hand. Yeah, XPSC. That first time I went.
2013.
Was it the first time? Or was it the second time?
I think it would have been the
It was
second
the
time.
second time.
2015?
The second time we did that, I thought I would write in a cello part. We could do it again. We could do a recording. I think it was on the camp that I added the cello part, so we could do that. Yeah, and I remember you were playing keyboard. Didn't use an Axis because it was easier for you to just play a regular keyboard, which is fine because it's just meant to be a keyboard part. Doesn't matter whether it's what sort of keyboard it is. And about the so it's written in Superpyth, mostly using the 7. Well, I mean it's based on the 5/20. Let's say major, but it's it's a leading mode. But then I play around with the 22-note hyperchromatic kind of system that you can get from Superpyth, particularly tuning to 22, and I have a sequence where you sort of go from the Superpyth major third, and then let's say the pental major third, then the pental minor third, and then the Superpyth minor third, and sort of have a repeating sequence that where the top note moves down by that one step of 22 each time. So it was kind of a way of exploring for me, just using Superpyth in 22.
Yeah.
Which was quite fun.
Yeah, that part seems to be tied together by a nice drone. or I guess the root
Yeah,
remains
the
there.
root does stay. And that
pedal,
was
pedal point, I guess.
the root remaining the same was something I figured out later. That's written into the cello part, which I didn't write originally, and I wasn't sure what chord progression that was because it was a sort of melodic thing. I wasn't sure where the chords went, but I figured it wasn't about chords then. It was about those hyperchromatic
The voice leading.
differences in the melody there, and that I just had a kind of a pedal underneath that, like you sort of hear with, I don't know, as an example, like let's say a 5 going to a sharp 5 pedal and a melodic effect going by semitone. It's kind of a similar thing, I suppose, to that maybe.
Yeah.
But with the hyperchromatic sort of steps of 22 under that pedal. Yeah.
No, it's beautiful, and then where it kind of modulates up at the end, it seems to almost suggest that it's incomplete or that it's a work in progress.
I mean, yeah, I got to that, I don't know, it is kind of complete for me, but, I mean, I did get some feedback from my, composition teacher, I suppose. I mean, he was my honors supervisor, and I never learned composition, but effectively that's what he was for me a little bit, back sort of a bit after I'd written it.
Gotcha.
He suggested I sort of develop it out a bit more, that it was a good start for a piece, and I had some good ideas. But for me, I've only had those 2 ideas, and I was quite happy with the development. And the end is just kind of like a nice 7 limit add 9 chord to kind of finish on, even if it's a 2 chord. Is it a 2 chord?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a two dominant 9 in a 7 limit tuning. Just because for me that was the best way to get to a full kind of 7 limit just kind of sound, like that just intonation sort of sound isn't fully like immediately available in Superpyth, but for me that was how I got to it. I don't know, that's one way of explaining sort of that sound I wanted, but it's certainly, finishing on a chord rooted on 2 certainly, gives an idea of incompleteness, for sure. But yeah, I don't know, I finished a bunch of my pieces. Well, no, I finished some of my pieces that way. I don't know what to say about it. That's just how I finished it. That was always just the end of the piece for me. I wasn't really thinking that I was leaving it incomplete or anything. That's just...
Yeah, one time I ended a whole... Yeah, it was like a whole box-style 2-part invention. And then at the very end, there was a minor 7th. That was the second degree over the first degree. And it was just like, okay. Non-resolution can end things.
Why not? You don't have to...
Why not?
Resolve it. I know, but for me, again, like, it still feels resolved. It's just not... it just doesn't resolve to 1,
Yeah.
Like, again, that's tied in with it doesn't really feel complete for me. It does feel like it finishes there.
We're gonna attempt now to do a 5/4 polyrhythm, despite the latency.
With the latency as well. Has that? Okay. I mean, it's not too much latency.
All right.
I did put that in there, didn't I? For
Yeah. So do you want the 5 or the 4? Dun, dun.
I'll take either.
All right, I'm doing 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 1, 2.
End of the song. Sorry, I was singing the actual thing.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do.
That was
Okay.
bad.
Thanks, Gareth.
I probably... Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the interview. That was fun. Go to bed if you need to.
What is your favorite 22 equal interval?
Oh, my favorite 22 equal interval? The 11 to 8, for sure. Yeah, if it didn't have that, I would have chosen a different tuning to get guitars made in and etc. So that's my favorite Zen interval, I think. I do love the 7 to 4 approximation in 22. I think that's great. I love the 11 to 10, the neutral intervals. Those are really, I love those melodically. Those are really cool.
Shenandoah, I long to see you away, you rolling river. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to hear you. Away, bound away, across the wide radio.
it's Jacob E. Thomas.
Yes.
Oh, we were just listening to your Oh, Twin and Do.
You know, it was great that Thomas sent that to me. Because it cost me to download MuseScore, and the playback was there, so I wasn't like I can't read 22 tone equal temperament, so I was just like I was going off of my ear and matching with the track, right? But I also like saw all these points where I recognize things that commonly get used in microtonality that are really cool, like oh twin and do, I long to hear you away. There's like that top part that you think is gonna go down to maybe like 1-7-6, but then it goes like 1-7, and then I think this is right. Correct me if I'm wrong. It goes down by 1 degree so that it's the 11th harmonic of the 4 chord instead, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like I was just seeing little things like that I recognized, and like, oh, this should probably be a major third, this should probably be such and such, and stuff like that. So I think really like even though I'm not fluent in 22 tone equal temperament because I haven't like sung in it as much as I should, like that was really a readable arrangement, you know?
Yeah, the same idioms have a way of rearing their ugly heads a lot. And definitely like the whole fun of this arrangement, the whole reason why, the real reason I got stuck in that place was trying to compose something original, utterly failing. Was it you that suggested to me?
Maybe no.
Well, I think somebody suggested to me to do a rearrangement of a folk tune. So to have this very well-known, frankly overexposed folk tune and like find ways to pervert it, you fall right into the Zen harmonic tropes. Like they're right there waiting to be fallen into.
Yeah, because it's almost it's a perfect surface to paint all of that
Yes.
on. It's like, oh, functional music. I don't have to worry about whether something that I create is functional.
Mm-hmm.
It's already functional.
Well,
That might
and
be the right
to
word.
break the functionality, to me, the whole reason I would bother to make an effort in Zen harmonics is the concept of insufficient Zen, even before I heard the words, became like it's very natural to me. It's really unfortunate to me when someone works very hard to use a Zen harmonic toolbox and the result is insufficient Zen because, while it's true that you can write really beautiful music that's not all that recognizably different, and the Zen harmonic toolbox matters for that, if you make the effort of using the toolbox, you might as well break things and make people go, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
Exactly. You got to do that, I think.
So
It's like using anything.
Let's spell it out a little bit. What are some of the tools happening here? So there's this surprise note. It's like just move it by a microtone that you can't do if you don't have microtones. There's also a little bit connected to that. There's this idea of compressing or stretching.
Yeah.
You might even just have a chord or a shape, and then with microtones, you can make every interval slightly larger or slightly smaller by the same scalar factor.
That's the entire first part. I just squished the lid down by like a sesquitone at the top, and then made everything else fit into that usual proportions.
Oh, yeah. I see. So you have this like little ocean and I long to see you. And like you squish it up. Ocean and I long to see you. And it's just shorter.
Note that piles on, you notice more that you're not ending up where you should.
I love that. That's something I use all the time. And 22 is a really good tuning for it.
Yeah.
I think of Zen harmonic melodies as fundamentally squishing certain contours that we're used to, or I almost try to incorporate that into what my definition of Zen harmonics has kind of evolved to become. So sometimes I'm using that consciously and sometimes not so much, but I found that if something has insufficient Zen, you can usually make a case for like the horizontal nature of the melody and like the vertical nature of the melody, like kind of agreeing with each other in their 12 tone equal temperament versions or something, you know? Yeah, that's just kind of how I think of it. I'm trying to pull up Emancipate Pitch here, and also turn my camera around. Dang it, how would I do that? Emancipate Pitch was written at an incredibly weird time in my life, because I wrote Emancipate Pitch like when I had first started microtonality, and by that I mean that I was always interested in microtones, but I had never like set it up myself with a computer and actually heard them, other than just like attempting to sing them, and those really were like pretty lackluster efforts because there wasn't any music in my life that used it. So when I wrote Emancipate Pitch, I didn't really know anything about 22 EDO. I hadn't gotten into like regular temperament theory. I just knew that there were different tunings with different amounts of notes, and I was just trying it.
I never got past that stage.
Yeah, regular temperament theory.
Where you started, that's where I still am.
Well, yeah, maybe I've been poisoned by numbers. Emancipate Pitch doesn't have that internal logic that I usually like to put in things. It was kind of like the first thing I wrote, and then afterwards I was just kind of like trying to translate it all.
And tell me about this album art, Stephen. You've got two people shaking hands. Who are they?
Oh, well, the two people shaking hands are Charles Ives and Arnold Schoenberg. And in class, it would always piss me off that people would talk about emancipating the dissonance. And what was it Charles Ives said about it? Starving on dissonances was his quote. So they both had quotes about dissonances that I include in the song with a slight lyric change. So I'm kind of like quoting them both. And it would always piss me off that nobody mentioned microtonality at all. And it was so vast, and like all of the lines of thinking that these composers had would naturally lead to the exploration of microtones, but it was like nobody cared. So this song was like a little bit kind of about that. And
yeah, you're adding your polemic to their already like very adamant voices. Like even by speaking their words, you're like you're participating in the way that should have been participated in, with similar like foot stomping vehemence in a historical conversation.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to do that. Whether I succeed or not is up to the listener.
I dance and sing to the beat of a drum, ignoring its sum with a throng. No time to find the deeper meaning. I'm busy feeling hyped for each song. Nothing's new, tonality's dead, or is it alive? I haven't checked, for I don't hum any serial tunes, and theory class abandons its roots. Only one sound provides that rush. Tuning gives me tools too much. Resurrecting the new in music here. Tradition broken, true final frontier. Its spectrum causes the ear to flinch. It actually emancipates dissonance and pitch. Nothing else does that quite like this. Harmonics are aplenty. Tuning gives me tools many. Finding the keys to music theory's youth. Eclectic, yet it holds to that crucial tonic. Its beauty causes the ear to stand. Starving on this dissonance now seems bold and grand. Nothing else does this throughout the land. I dance and sing to the beat of a drum, ignoring its sum with the throng. No time to find the deeper meaning. I'm busy feeling hyped for each song. journey into new tunings has begun. Unlimited sounds and compositional fun. And the best part is, it only strengthens the familiar knowledge. Thank you. Thank you.
No, let's have a.
So why'd
yeah.
you start here, Steven? 22. You've learned all this stuff about microtonality and you want to just start f***ing some shit up. Why'd you start here?
I mean, I thought 22 would... No, I'm trying to remember. I think it was because, in the sort of internet literature, with what I had discovered about Paul Erlich, I kept hearing all these great things about 22. And I really liked the idea of it. I felt like it had a lot of the things I wanted in a tuning without being quarter tones, but it was like around the same size. So I think that's kind of why I got into it, and mainly like Paul Ehrlich's 22 paper, which I didn't apply any of the techniques that he recommends in his paper or the scales that he recommends whatsoever. I found out later that I was using things like Porcupine, but I had there's almost no self-awareness of what mode I'm using in this piece at all, except for the section with a bunch of gobbledygook that looks like it just has a ton of accidentals at measure 53 to 57. That part is just a giant run in 11 EDO, and then the chord, the double stab, is just one chord voiced with all 11 notes of 11 EDO.
So yeah, 11 looks bad on 22.
Right, well, if I use Dorco, it'll look good because the accidentals will, like, not collide with everything.
Well, and the magnetism in your first major effort that you had for those things, to me, theory is only really earning its pay when it predicts that we're going to have a magnetism for things like that. And I guess kind of as its starting place, that if we are in search of the new, here would be hot places to look. Like, of the best intersection between new and still magnetic, still, wondrous. Like, you know what I'm trying to say. If it's going to be earning its keep, I expect it to accurately predict what Stephen Weigel would do upon his first time, like, trying out something like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a gateway tuning, 22. In that way that it's like quarter tones, but not. It also is it is a case of what I would call metatunal music. And this is my neologism.
I've heard it before.
Yeah, well, I want to lay it out. Just tunal being a suffix or a word ending. You could then add prefixes to, referring to the tuning system. Monotunal meaning being of only one tuning system. Bitunal, polytunal. So metatunal would be music about tuning, and that's sort of the subject matter of the lyrics too.
Yeah, I guess the lyrics do make it, for me, rather unexpected version of metatunalism.
This whole thing is like a fall from grace. I'd been tricked. I was told that, well, I wasn't really told, but rather it's implied that like new complexity in 12th tone equal temperament is the outer bounds of what you can do with yourself. And that's so not true. It's just like...
It was assumed onto your behalf at some point.
It's nothing short of a conspiracy.
I think it's my most popular original song on SoundCloud. Like, it has over 1,000 plays, and none of the other songs had been able to touch it, you know? So I'm wondering if, like, I should go back to a more innocent time, and... Yeah, probably. Anything I can do to try and get the magic back will be forced. Unless I pretend to be a new online persona or something.
heard, I don't remember, some psychology textbook or something, where there's a hypothesis of adult human life is just going in increasingly desperate search of the things that lit our fire when we were a teenager and not being able to experience them with the same vividness again. And our continuing disappointment long past the point that we should be surprised that that's gone now.
Yeah. A stirring explanation for our deep sadness. And it's also like addiction, actually. Yeah. You're like trying to get the rush of that first time that you can never get again.
How versed are you in like EDM? Because this was the most bizarre and nerdy EDM anthem that I'd ever heard the first time I heard it. I don't know much about it, but I knew enough about it to recognize that.
I am like a total EDM pleb. I was just using like all of the stock drums in Pro Tools, and then there was one drum, like the very beginning one, that is kind of like a repeated like snare hit that sounds pretty live. So that was just like a thing where it was a held note. I definitely was making that association a little bit as I was writing. I was always paranoid, and actually I still am, about singing microtonal music and having like people in the audience who just, will not use their brain to understand what's going on, thinking that I'm singing a bunch of wrong notes of those kinds of artists.
And it's also more classical in form.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, just the choice of genre and the ways that it kind of reused some of its tropes, but also mocked it, and its strange relationship with it is part of that like adolescent zeitgeist that it has. To me, it is anyway.
patterns I find each time always matters of hats or finds exposing through chapters. So fine the roses bloom and concerning him or the blurrence of time. Grab her and dine, reach for wine and flatter of that it's all fine. The roses bloom and her.
Thank you for listening in. If you'd like to know the details of a particular piece, the track information is available at our website, nowandzen.libsyn.com. You can also reach out to us via Facebook. Remember to vote Zen Harmonic.